regardless of how this occurred, the finger points directly at Vladimir Putin. Just one more example of the type of state that he is overseeing. This is a mafia state in which opposition figures don't have happy endings. We've seen individuals fall out of windows in the past, hit by the tip of an umbrella on a sunny day, have their plane blow up in flight, as was the case with Prigozhin, or right now the individual who is emerging as a somewhat serious challenger to Putin in the upcoming election declared ineligible for that election. So there's no path to real opposition anymore. You even saw individuals who just wanted to put a rose on a memorial that was symbolic of Navalny. They were arrested and hustled away as well. So there's total consolidation of power. There's no fiction anymore about democracy in Russia, if there ever was. We do know, for example, that he was poisoned in the past and really only avoided death because of very good medical care in Germany. After which, of course, after recovering from that, this courageous individual decides to return to Russia, knowing that he's going to be arrested on arrival, and he was. So he was not only the most effective thorn in the side of Putin and the most effective at exposing the corruption, the incredible palace that Putin had built, $1.2 or $3 billion palace in the Black Sea, and all the other shenanigans of the corrupt elite in Russia. All of that, he was also incredibly courageous in making that return, very likely knowing that eventually this was going to be his fate. I think this is just one more reminder of the kind of threat manifest by Putin, and the fact that this threat won't end. Even if he were to achieve his objectives in Ukraine, and we should not allow that, needless to say, we should do everything we can to the contrary to enable Ukraine to achieve its objectives. But if he were able to achieve what he's seeking in Ukraine, he wouldn't stop there. But it's really all about, of course, not allowing what right could look like on his border, because his own people would say, hey, you know, they're doing pretty well over there in Ukraine. Look at what happens if you actually have a thriving, prosperous country and economy and democracy, however flawed it was and is. That would be anathema to him. And so he has to extinguish that. Talking to Ukrainian leaders here, including some soldiers, some of the most courageous of those who are here. And there's a large Ukrainian lunch every year that many of us attend, 4 or 5 prime ministers from NATO countries there as well. And it's pretty clear that they are rationing artillery. They're very worried also about running out of the air and ballistic missile defense interceptors and munitions. Concerned about some of the other capabilities that we have typically provided in the most substantial quantity. So keep in mind that we haven't done a presidential drawdown authority action since December. So what's in the pipeline has largely been delivered to Ukraine, with a number of exceptions to be sure. But we've got to get that pipeline filled back up as quickly as we absolutely can, or there will be more decus. This is collective security, Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. And this, you know, Henry Kissinger, before he passed away, said that NATO security doesn't start just at NATO borders anymore. It actually starts at the Ukrainian border with Russia. And I agree with that very much, given, as I said earlier, he wouldn't stop. So let's stop this now and here so that it doesn't manifest a greater threat to NATO, noting that to some degree, Putin's setting out to make Russia great again has actually made NATO great again. And of all things, what all of us have long sought, those of us who have been engaged with NATO for many years, in my experience, starts as a second lieutenant in 1975 as a paratrooper in the Allied Command Europe Mobile Force. It goes all the way through 1, 3, and 4-star NATO assignments. All of us who have been part of this have long been asking Europe to do more. Well, they're actually doing more. The EU just approved just the EU as a body approved 50 billion euros in additional assistance, noting that the EU and European countries together had already provided 2 for every $1 when you look at all assistance in aggregate, not just security. They've actually pledged more in security than we have pledged as well. Not a huge amount, but more. And the EU and European countries have been stepping up. The Secretary General reports 18 out of 31 will meet the 2% of GDP on defense this year. And there's a number of others that are approaching very close to that 2% number. So what we've been railing about for many years at ministerials and so forth is actually transpiring. And that should be reassuring as well. But at the end of the day, what the US provides is beyond invaluable. It really ends up inevitably being the foundational element or the cornerstone or keystone, whatever image you want to use for any major NATO undertaking. Well, this depends on a number of different factors. Among them, how efficient can all of these capabilities be operated together? The issue of interoperability and standardization always is in the background here. If they all can work together and you have common standards, then actually you look at this in aggregate, the numbers actually are very, very impressive. On the other hand, if they can't work together and you have a lot of eaches and you have to have workarounds to enable that, and I've experienced that. Again, I was a 4-star NATO commander as well as US commander in Afghanistan. Then obviously the inefficiencies don't allow getting the full effect of that money. So again, that's another reality that NATO has to contend, and it's been working on this again for many years, but the threat of Russia does give this new urgency and impetus. There's some very significant elements out there that are not certain. Most prominent right now being continued US support, $60 billion, fill that pipeline up, provide the artillery that's so desperately needed, the air defense interceptors, the medium range precision munitions, the dual purpose improved conventional munition artillery, all of this. It also depends on decisions that have to be made in Kyiv about force generation. What is the age of conscription going to be, for example? How can you continue to fight a war if the average age of a soldier on the front lines is over 40? Quite contrast to the soldiers that I was privileged to lead in Iraq and Afghanistan, who were typically in the 18 to 23-year-old average age. It depends on Russia's continued ability to generate forces and to sustain these staggering casualties that they're taking from these essentially human wave attacks. Again, there's numerous of these factors on which it all depends. So you can't answer that question without actually starting by saying it depends and then listing the factors I've laid out and actually a number of other ones, the respective abilities of each side to develop and employ new technology, for example, in the way that the Ukrainians have so expertly used maritime drones to force the Black Sea Fleet largely to withdraw from the port of Sevastopol for the first time in a couple of centuries.